Good evening and welcome to Documentary New Zealand. October is Autism Awareness Month. When you think of autism, you may think of Dustin Hoffman and Rayman, or you may remember the story of Casey Aubrey-Thompson, the autistic girl whose mother killed her out of desperation. That sort of tragedy, though, is the exception. Many autistic children and adults are leading full and rich lives. Tonight, we're going to look at some of the variations of this complex and puzzling condition. You see, each autistic person is very different. And by meeting and talking with those with mild autism, we get a glimpse into the different and often astonishing autistic mind.
Whoa, whoa, whoa!
No, that's a recording.
You can tell which animal.
That's the man? No, the loudspeaker is.
Harold Stone is about to marry Marie Stewart and become stepfather to Daniel. It would be easy to think Harold's strange or mad because he behaves differently from other people. In fact, Harold and his family-to-be are all autistic. Harold's brilliant, eccentric, and almost passes for normal. He has a fascinating form of autism known as Asperger's syndrome, which doctors are only now beginning to understand.
But what span is it?
Harold has spent his whole life feeling like he's come down from another planet. When he was diagnosed 2 years ago, it was a huge relief to understand why.
This is a wonderful autistic stopping place.
Harold's one of a group of autistic people that have allowed us to see inside their curious and stressful world.
I knew there was something wrong with me, or something different, but I didn't have any fancy terms to describe how I was different. As I got older, it just got more and more sort of confusing. I'm not aware of the nuances of difference socially, and I miss a lot of those things. It's when people talk with their eyes to each other, I'm shut out. And when I was younger, I didn't have any time for the games that people played, like at puberty when they were sort of trying to chat up chicks or something like that. I missed all that. I missed a whole lot of things. And it's only later on in life that, as some of these things have been pointed out to me, that I've connected up with things like feelings and emotions and communication.
What are we up to now?
Autism is an enduring mystery. We don't know what causes it, we can't test for it, and there is no cure. We do know it makes people experience the world in a very unusual way. Harold's brain processes information differently from ours. His life is full of sights and sounds, tastes and smells that he has difficulty making sense of. Imagine waking up and finding yourself transported to a different land, where you couldn't speak the language, didn't understand the culture, and couldn't make yourself understood.
A number of us, myself included, are very wound up all the time. And as a child, I had lots and lots of adrenaline rushing around the system, far more than anybody else, I realise now, and I know why too, because it's extremely stressful being in the mode that you're not used to. So if you were taken down to the stock market and had to be a stockbroker and shout and yell like they do down there the whole day long, you'd be really stressed out by the first hour because you'd lost millions of dollars, and you'd really be tizzed up at lunchtime. You'd have to start paying for some of the stuff. Whereas that high level of stress is with us all the time.
Dale is much more deeply autistic than Harold. Like many children with autism, he seemed perfectly normal as a baby.
Up till Dale was 18 months, I didn't really suspect anything. And then at 18 months, he just seemed to be a changed little person. Whatever he was doing much less of. And he'd, over the next 2, probably 3 months, he stopped talking. And he just wasn't interacting at all with us or with his older brother. He just kind of closed down shop, really.
Dale seemed to retreat further and further into himself and began to do things his parents found frightening and bizarre.
He used to get up in the middle of the night, usually about 2 or 3 in the morning, and he would run, do this little circuit opening and closing doors. And I don't just mean once or twice, I mean hundreds of times. He would have gone on for 2 hours doing that. Switching light switch on, switches on and off, on and off, on and off. And then he would go into the kitchen and always naked. I don't know why. Dale always used to do these things naked. And then he would pull everything out of the big utility drawer, throw it all on the floor, sit in the drawer, open the peanut butter and eat it and put it all over himself, and then he would take everything off the floor and put it all nice and ordered back into the drawer again. I sat there and watched him one night for 2 hours just thinking, this is unbelievable.
He was saying nose, eyes, mouth, and then you just couldn't get any more. You just kept looking, why won't he do here? You know, you're looking for the other part there. And yeah, he just seemed to more and more just start to do his own thing and just play by himself.
While Mary and Tony struggled to understand what was happening to Dale, he showed no interest in communicating with his family. Home video of his second Christmas reveals the withdrawal that they would soon realise had chilling implications. In the past, Dale would have been placed in an institution and left to his own impenetrable world. But we are gaining insight into why he behaves as he does and how to help him learn to connect with others.
See, if I stare at him, they won't come up to me. See, I've got to make myself little. If I stand up, I'm more scary. Now, if I lay down, I could probably get them all licking me.
A lot of our insight into autism started here in eastern Colorado. Dr. Temple Grandin is a world expert in the design of cattle handling equipment. In the world of autism, she's a superstar.
When I was 2.5 years old, I had all the standard symptoms of autism. I had no speech, I would sit and rock, tantrums, flapping. I would just sit and dribble sand through my hands. And my parents realized that something was, really drastically wrong. All the doctors were telling my mother to put me in an institution, and boy, she just fought them off. She wasn't going to put me in an institution. If my mother hadn't done all the things that she had done, I wouldn't be here today. And let me tell you, I'm like super grateful to her. But you gotta have speech get yacked out.
In July, Temple visited Auckland to share her inside view of autism. One thing she's helped us to understand is that autism affects the way the brain processes sensory information.
Now, the child's born with an abnormality that causes a lot of sensory problems. And one of the reasons why I wanted to sit and dribble sand through my hand was to just shut out the world, because noise hurt my ears, scratchy clothes bothered me. One of the problems you've got in some of these very severe cases of autism is no information's not getting in. You can get hearing that will cut in and out. You can have hearing that has static in it. Those same kind of things you hear on your cell phone, some people with autism have got that in their hearing.
We all rely on being able to make sense of what we see, hear, touch, smell, and taste. But autism impairs the brain's ability to process the information it receives from the senses in a meaningful way. Children can feel bombarded by sensations that are confusing and stressful. Each individual is different, but many are unable to screen out background noise. Others may have distorted vision. If the brain gets scrambled information, this will affect the way the brain develops.
I hated balloons when I was a child, because they were dreadful things. You never know when they're going to pop, and that would hurt my ears. Phones were terrible things, because you never know when a phone's going to go off.
Okay, here we go. Ready?
6-year-old Elliot hates having his hearing tested. The noises he's hearing irritate him. When Elliot was adopted as a baby, there was no sign that anything was wrong. By the time he was 2, his behaviour suggested he might be deaf. Like a lot of autistic children, he stopped responding when his parents spoke to him. And yet he could hear. Some noises seemed to hurt his ears. His problem was not deafness, but autism. When autistic children have tantrums and lash out, they are not being naughty. They can be reacting to sensory problems.
Hey, come on, stop it. Stop it. Do you want to turn around the other way?
Change and new environments will almost always be difficult for them. They become confused and overwhelmed.
One more.
If sound hurts your ears, and the world's a really noisy place, I found if I just sat and rocked, I could shut it off. My ears basically had two settings. They had like booming, super loud, or I could just rock and turn my ears off. My ears had two settings, off and on, super loud. So that's one of the things that makes them stim. They stim to shut out stuff that hurts.
Stimming, or self-stimulating behaviour, is one of the things that sets autistic people apart. They'll repeat strange, ritualistic behaviour endlessly. On the day we visited Elliot at home, he took out and replaced the last few pieces of his puzzle over and over again. It seems to calm him down when his stress is overwhelming. But sensory problems are only one part of the autistic puzzle. The most striking characteristic of autistic people is their inability to relate to others, their strange aloneness. Sherilyn is 8 and has Asperger's syndrome. Although she can talk quite well, she has real difficulty communicating with other people. Her parents are meeting Brisbane psychologist Dr. Tony Atwood.
What can you tell me about your mum? Oh, hang on, just before you say, how do you think your mum feels at the moment? Have a look at her. How do you think she feels?
He's an expert at helping parents like Nina and Ian understand their mystifying children.
Can you make your face look happy? Good, okay. Can you make your face look sad? Can you make your face look angry? Oh, good one. When children develop, they very quickly acquire a skill of working out what somebody is thinking and feeling. So I'll give an example. If a stranger walks into the room, you can almost immediately tell by their facial expression, as soon as they start talking, their tone of voice, their body language, or the circumstances, what's going on in their mind, what they're thinking, what they're feeling. Not only do you pick up the signals, but you know how to respond appropriately. Now, that's a skill that we take for granted as very easy, but that's exactly the skill that those with autism and Asperger's syndrome find extremely difficult. They will see the same image, but they will not see the same clues that we do on what somebody's thinking and feeling. It's what we call being mind blind.
Temple Grandin observes people as if they were another species. All her life, she's tried to learn rules for how we behave. It's a strictly logical, intellectual process. She knows there's still so much more to communication that she misses out on.
I didn't even know that people had this language of the eyes until I read about it in a book 5 years ago. This book called Mind Blindness. But I was just talking to Mark. He's a man that works for me doing design work. And we were talking about the language of the eyes, and he was saying, well, you know, somebody like rolls their eyes, I get this little feeling. Well, I don't get that.
The strange phenomenon of mind blindness makes it extremely difficult for someone like Jen to lead a normal life. She's known for a long time that she could not understand other people. To her, we seem to share a secret language. In spite of a life fraught with anxiety and psychiatric treatment when she was young, it was only last year that Jen knew she was autistic. Jen has a degree in German, but she can't read other people's expressions.
I know when people smile or laugh, hopefully that means there's something funny or happy. It may not even mean that, because when you get into irony and sarcasm and all that, then we tend to be lost. But I have to rely that I basically go by smiling, laughing or frowning and stuff like that, looking at the mouth.
Tell me what plagiarise means.
Stealing somebody else's intellectual property, pretending that it is one's own.
Jen's very bright. On the verbal part of an IQ test, she scores in the highest percentile.
Tell me what diverse means.
Varied. Things that are different from each other.
But it's a different matter when tested on her social understanding. Auckland University researcher Deborah Waldron is studying status. She's testing Jen's understanding of a typical business meeting.
Rate on a scale of 0 to 100 how uncontrolled each of the people were.
These are really hard questions. Just have to make it up, really.
The men in the video gave off lots of clues about their status, things like who said most and who was looked at the most.
90.
But Jen really has no idea as to their relationships. Imagine a life where you could never effectively judge what somebody else might be thinking or feeling. Jen feels that the inability to read others' intentions has at times even been dangerous.
With males, yeah, I didn't know that they were making a very strong sexual advance on me until either it happened that I was suddenly engaged in unwanted sexual behaviour that I didn't even want, or somebody would manage to extricate me and tell me later, look, what was happening was such and such, and I didn't even know that what was about to happen. I mean, that is... So, yeah, the person is extremely vulnerable. We have to learn everything, all our social skills and that. We're learning them by rules instead of somehow having an innate knowledge of it.
Jen belongs to a group of adults with autism who get together to practice socialising, something they can find terrifying. Even though they all know each other, their awkwardness is astonishing. Jen is very anxious.
Let's drop sitting up here, but then there'll be the ladies.
We're going to need some little plates so people can serve,
Social situations are stressful because the amount of effort that goes into it, the intellectual effort, to read every signal and the significance of it. Am I saying the right things? What does that nod mean? Why have the eyes moved? It can be going through the body language. He's moved his hand. What does that... So they're computing. They are walking through this minefield, which leads to an enormous degree of anxiety. So it's not just an intellectual exercise, it's an emotional exercise too. And there's one man I know with Asperger's syndrome who's a Vietnam War veteran, and he found going to a party more harrowing than warfare.
Early on in their party, Jen and her friends play games. This relaxes them because many of them hate social conversation. Word games, with their clear rules and everyone taking turns, are so much easier for them to understand. But it hardly begins to make up for normal human interaction.
4, 8, 9, is it? Excellent.
Oh, well, 1.
But I don't think it's...
My big problem was in high school. Let me tell you, teenagers are a social animal I just don't understand at all. They're totally social. Well, and I'm not a totally social animal. I'm interested in you know, thinking about interesting things, doing interesting things. I mean, I'm like a technical kind of person. You know, just sort of sitting around gabbing, and when I was in school, it was the Beatles was the big thing, and I just couldn't understand why my roommate was, I went to boarding school, and, you know, was rolling around on the floor squealing when Ringo Starr came on the Ed Sullivan Show. I just didn't get that.
I don't like eye contact. Now, sit there and I'll look at you right now. Now, when I was a small kid, you can imagine that you're up here and I'm down there and you're looking down. To me, and to a lot of other autistic people, it feels like you're looking inside of us at things which you shouldn't be looking at. And I'm not talking grubby things. It just feels like that you can get in through our eyes and into our brain somehow and take things out or take things from us which you're not meant to, and we can't protect ourselves.
Sherilyn already has difficulty understanding other people, and she's not good at making friends. But because her autism has been recognised at a young age, her family have a chance to teach her things other children learn naturally.
Intellectually, her IQ is in the normal range, so if you're doing some of the schoolwork, she's fine. But when it comes to understanding friendships, she's at a much younger level. When she gave the faces, I suspect that she's been taught how to do the faces, and I commend the people who did that. But they didn't show the degree of complexity and quality that you would normally expect with kids at that level. What makes Asperger's syndrome is many things, including social reasoning, but it's not simply delay, it's an oddity in that social side. The difficulty for your daughter is that she camouflages it so well that people may not recognise the difficulties that she's facing So congratulations, she has Asperger's syndrome. For me, it's very clear. But that helps because you now know. You have an explanation as to why she's different. She's a smart kid. She's just got to learn what other kids were born with.
Come on. People with mild autism want social contact, but are not very good at it. Those with severe autism, like Dale, seem to ignore other people completely. Parents describe a huge sense of loss as their children withdraw from them and inhabit their own world, entirely uninterested in others.
39, 40, 41.
Don't forget to buy your tickets and be in to win with Telly Bingo. It's what we do on Wednesday.
You're going to shake. Stand up there. On your feet.
Because autistic children show no interest in other people, they don't learn from just watching or imitating. School can be really stressful and overstimulating. Although they often have normal intelligence, if they don't have language, parents struggle to connect with them at all. Dale's surrounded with love and stimulation, just like his brothers. But because his brain is wired differently, he needs a lot more help to learn.
The biggest problem is that when we try to communicate, he seems to have trouble processing what exactly the game is. Life's a race against time. It's a race against this syndrome that's developing worse and worse unless you keep interrupting it.
Mary and Tony have spent thousands of hours and thousands of dollars researching how to help Dale. There's no medical cure for autism. The answer seems to lie in education. Mary and some other parents have set up a special school using a behavioural approach.
Good boy. Look, Dale, we're going to do some numbers. Ready? What number's this one, sweetheart?
It can take endless repetition, but Dale can learn. By grabbing his attention and rewarding him for appropriate behaviour, tutors are teaching Dale skills that'll help him at mainstream school. And they're teaching him how to
This one,
learn.
what's this? Keep going. Good stuff. You show me good numbers. What's this one? Dale, nice work. Do you want a chippy?
Chippy.
Okay, here we go. There you go, Dale.
You know, just because of the disability that autism is, you can't just speak to the child and get a response. Things have to be done in a certain way for them to communicate what it is that you want and what they need to be giving you back. And I know myself, half the time when we're in the home environment, I can be confusing Dale just because you assume he's getting it and he isn't getting it, and you always have to break things down to where he understands what the steps are.
Keep going, Dale. What's this one? And keep going.
21.
Good stuff. Keep going.
21.
Good stuff. Keep going, keep going. Right, let's go.
Using tickles and hugs as rewards, teachers are switching Dale on to the value of interacting with others.
1, 2, 3.
Before, Dale was totally just Dale, whereas at least now there's a couple of things that he's interested in. Like he'll like to come and play on the tractor. There's some things that he likes to do with you. And also, what's a huge improvement is that you can actually now ask him to do things and he gets it, whereas before you couldn't. Even just like, if he got more than 5 steps away from you, then he'd just run and you could never stop him, where at least now you can say, Dale, come back, and he will come back.
Now, the thing that I think's important is you got to have 40 hours a week where you keep the kid's brain tuned in. And I had that, because I had my speech therapy nursery school in the morning with 6 other little kids. I had the nanny all afternoon with just me and my sister. And then, since I lived in New England, we had to have proper table manners. So I had an hour and a half a day of structured meals where I had to sit at the table and I had to behave myself. I had to stay tuned in. I wasn't allowed to, like, put my fork up here and study it or something. That just wasn't allowed. But I can also remember totally tuning out, doing things like rocking. You could sit there and rock, and it was like taking a drug. But the problem is, you let the little kids do this, their brain's not going to develop.
What colour? Brown. Nice talking. You want a tickle? Here I come. Gonna tickle.
I want
Okay, this first. What colour?
Elliot's parents have also had great success with a behavioural approach. They bring therapists over from Australia to train students to work with him.
Up your leg.
Because his brain processes information differently, they have to teach him everything they want him to know. He won't just learn things by himself.
If you get working with these kids, the instant you see symptoms at age 2, you're going to have a much better outcome. And it's really important to work on them really hard on getting language started.
Give to Daddy.
One thing that sometimes happens is the parents will go to the doctor and the doctor goes, oh, they just outgrow it. They don't outgrow it. The doctor needs to be saying, hey, you need to be getting into a really good, early program right now.
3 little monkeys jumping on the bed. One fell off and bumped his head.
As well as his home program, Elliot goes to his local primary school, where parents have set up a class specially for autistic children. In the last few months, after 4 years of intensive therapy, Elliot has started talking.
Mama called the doctor and the doctor said...
What do you see?
I see chalk. I see chalk.
Good. Okay. Talk to me. Talk to me. Stop. Okay, stop. Off you go then.
To get language is fantastic now because I really, in my heart, thought Elliot would never, ever speak. I can actually see Mark responding now to Elliot so much more because it's a two-way thing. You know, it's that dad and son thing now is there. It's not like you're talking to something that really isn't responding back to you. You're not getting the feedback as much, but now we are. We're able to talk with them. And you get this definite yes or no, and you know he means it. And he'll come up now, I want a drink of milk, please, Daddy. And that's huge.
Where do you want to tickle? Where does Elliot want to tickle?
At last, Elliot's mum and dad can hear his voice, but there's no way of telling just how good Elliot's language can get. Harold Stone loves gaslights. He has working gaslights in his Hamilton home. He also loves ancient weather patterns, reading maps, and learning the names of plants.
I used to like reading the telephone directory. I love the instructions in the first part of the telephone directory, and some person would say, oh, what are you up to now? Page 9 in the telephone directory.
Trains and trams fascinate Harold too.
Bordering by the time.
Harold's soon-to-be stepson, Daniel, absolutely loves talking and reading about Handel's Messiah and the art of Michelangelo. He'd spend all day on these interests if he was allowed to.
Bordering by the time when Michelangelo was alive.
I think one of the most endearing things is their special interest. And I call them a special interest rather than an obsession. They can reach a point where they do become an obsession, though.
Shall I sing the Messiah now? Shall I sing it now?
Okay.
Dun 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 dun
It can be something that has a degree of structure, like studying clocks or lampposts or things like that, which catalogues the information because you find the world so chaotic, you can't understand the threads or pattern. So you look for a structure which gives you a sense of perfection. So many of the special interests become the person's way of calming down. In a way, it's trying to find order out of chaos.
Jen absolutely loves libraries. She hates public holidays because libraries are closed. She loves the order and quiet of the library, but there's a little more to it than that.
This is one of my sensory, what do you call it, sensitivities. But as opposed to some other people, I get some very pleasurable sensory, what do you call it, hypersensitivities. And one of them is the sensation of
rustling. And of course there's a lot of that in here. And it's like a cat being stroked, that's the feeling.
Jen also loves chickens. Being with her chickens gives her a peace and serenity she doesn't get in the outside world. Her interest in chickens also provides the chance for social contact with people who share her passion.
When I finally got to working age, it wasn't until then that I found out other people actually did this. I stumbled across another person who told me they also, you know, kept poultry, and then, wonder of wonders, this person belonged to a poultry club. I'm now a 25-year committee member of the South Auckland Poultry and Pigeon Club. Don't move too suddenly or you'll get a fright. He's an Indian game bantam male. His name is Yamaha. What I think I know most about is their day-to-day behaviour. Like, each bird will have its own little quirks, and how to get the best out of that bird. Like, you want it to lay, or you want it to mate with this bird over here, or you want it to sit on its nest over here. I mean, it's all the behaviour stuff. You have to sort of trick them or persuade them to do what you want. So it's all psychology.
Like many autistic people, Jen's at ease understanding the psychology of animals, but relating to other people is problematic and stressful.
The giraffe.
Getting diagnosed and understanding why he's like he is has made Harold more confident with other people.
Long eyelashes when you paint it, Daniel. There's no tusks on this either.
It's almost like that trunk.
Harold and Marie are getting married in a few weeks, but both know they don't feel love in the usual way.
Although I'm going to get married, the person knows that I'm not attached to people, and neither was my father. And a number of autistic people can just walk off and leave people behind. And I wouldn't want to hurt this wifey person doing that. I mean, she's very nice, but I can do that. I always have been able to.
Temple Grandin says she feels like Mr. Spock from Star Trek, influenced far more by logic than emotion.
I've never been into the boyfriend-girlfriend thing. I realize there's some things in my life I just don't have. I think loyalty's a better way to put it. I mean, I always try to be loyal. But it's more of an intellectual thing rather than an emotional thing. I have emotions, but it's simpler. I can be happy, I can be sad. I don't have complex emotion. And I find emotion very boring to talk about. It's like emotion is definitely there, but it's much more in the present. It's sort of more like a dog, 1 minute he's wagging the tail, the next minute he can be growling. I don't think dog holds a long, deep-seated grudge.
At a funeral, everyone bawled, and my brother and I looked around the place and we thought, where did they know to do the crying? Where did this card come along and say, bawl now, please, you have to bawl at once, do a lot of bawling or something? It was nothing like that. And we looked and looked, and him and I just sort of were flabbergasted. And I'd never been to a funeral before, so this was the first one, and I wanted to get it all right, but I missed something terrible. I missed winter ball.
And yet, autistics do get deeply moved by certain issues.
Well, I remember reading this article in the Wall Street Journal about these 3 employees that worked for Iraqi Airlines. Well, there's no Iraqi Airlines, it's all gone. And all they have left is one wrecked hangar, an engine, no planes. And there was a stewardess, a pilot, and a mechanic. But you see, their sense of who they were was, I'm a pilot. And every day he'd fly in the simulator, the broken simulator. I can't even talk about this without crying. The pilot still flies the simulator, because that's what he is. His whole sense of being was, I am a pilot. And then there was a lady who was a stewardess, and, because of all the sanctions, they had to sell all their stuff off, but she didn't sell her uniform because that's who she is. Now, I get kind of choked up about this, and there's the mechanic, and he takes apart and puts together one engine over and over and over again. You see, and I can relate to that. I am what I think I am, what I do. And this is why it's so important for people with autism and Asperger's that are real high functioning to get intellectually satisfying work.
Temple's life revolves around her work rather than her relationships. These days, she travels with ease around the world. But she's had to overcome a problem common to people with autism: constant anxiety. Autistic people can feel a pervasive anxiety, which seems to be physiological. A constant feeling of stress only worsens their problems when dealing with other people. They can become very aggressive or depressed.
The problem I have with the anxiety thing is I just had it every day no matter what. You know, it could be nothing would get it stimulated. You know, yeah, if I got stressed, it made it worse, but it was a biological thing. And then when I was 31 years old, I started taking some antidepressant medication. I took an old tricyclic. You don't want to use that stuff now. But I've been on it so long, I wouldn't dare change it. And I took this little pill, and the anxiety went away. I go, boy, I really am a believer in biochemistry. I used to think if I could figure out my psychological problems, I could make that anxiety go away. That's not how it worked.
As a teenager, Temple noticed that her beloved cattle became calm when held in the grip of restraining bars. She'd always craved a hugging feeling, but hated letting other people near her. So she built a machine she calls her squeezing machine. It's now patented and seems to help some other autistics too.
I'll demonstrate how the squeeze machine works. Get in here on my hands and knees. Head through here. This. Roll it by operating this lever. When I was a little kid, I would get in under the sofa cushions so that, because I found that calmed me down. Built my first prototype of it back in high school, and I was so anxious all the time, I just couldn't stand it. It was like, I felt like I was in a room with a lion chasing me around, and my nervous system was just in full activation, you know, fight or flight. I was desperate for relief, and I found that if I used the squeezing machine, that helped to calm down my nerves. It makes me have calm and gentle thoughts, sort of like it gets the right neurotransmitters going to have calm and nice feelings, you know, rather than not so nice feelings.
Sherilyn's parents are becoming worried about her behaviour. The effort of fitting in at school is enormous. At home, she vents her stress on her family by having uncontrollable tantrums. She's constantly wound up. The slightest change in routine can cause enormous anxiety.
Their anxiety may lead to an obsessive-compulsive disorder. Their depression may lead to suicide attempts, or their depression may lead to an anger because they can't fit in, and an explosive anger when someone gets hurt.
Sometimes she'll say that she wants to kill everybody, that she's going to wait till we're all asleep and then kill us, or she's threatening to kill...
Her little brother.
Yes. Does she really... I mean, should we be worried
Yes.
about that?
Yeah. When any child starts saying those sorts of things, it rings alarm bells that they're under enormous stress. What we look for in this situation is that sometimes the child can actually be quite depressed. When you're depressed, you, as an adult, you tend to take it inward of it's my fault, I'm not successful, the pain of life is too much, I might as well die. Kids tend to do it outwardly. It's your fault, you did it wrong, and terrible blame.
And she just seems so far out, you know, where I can't reach her. She has no... I feel she has no connection to me whatsoever.
Yes.
You know, we're not connected at all. It's like this person living with us that isn't quite living with us.
It's a stranger in your own house. Yes, and I think that's a good analogy, a stranger in your own house.
If you're sad and you know it, say boo-hoo. If you're sad and you know it, say boo-hoo.
Many families say that their autistic children are like strangers, unresponsive and distant. But understanding their difficulties is half the battle. If parents know early what's wrong and work to relax their children and overcome their fear of human contact, the rewards can be great. Most autistic children can learn to interact.
Dale's really lovable, and I do remember when he turned 2 and we were, that Christmas, he'd been in hospital probably 4 months before that, 5 months before that, and he had stopped cuddling, and he hated being touched, and He wasn't doing things like a child would, like come into your bed in the morning and reach out to you and want cuddles. And I remember thinking at the time, this is not good. I did a lot of cuddling of him and a lot of touching of Dale, and it was almost like he got comfortable again.
He'll come in and cuddle. He likes, whether he likes the emotion of love or whether he just likes the stimulus of being cuddled, I don't care, but he likes to cuddle. And, you know, and you just get just as fired up about his little gain as what you would some superstar, I guess. You just change your yardstick.
Elliot's parents are pleased with the progress he's made through early and rigorous intervention. They feel it's starting to strengthen the emotional bond between them and their son.
I mean, we've always basically loved him to bits and it wouldn't change anything. He comes to us all the time. I mean, we can say, do you want a cuddle? And he'll just come running up and give you a cuddle and that's
He
it.
asks for a hug now. I want a hug. And I think the thing too is because Elliot's adopted, because we waited so long for a child, and we got the perfect child first of all, and still really we don't see his autism as a negative anything at all. I mean, we still love him as if he was completely normal.
Hallelujah! Praise God in His temple on earth. Praise Him in His temple in heaven. Praise Him for His mighty achievement. Praise Him for His transcendent greatness. Praise Him with blasts of the trumpet.
When in doubt, laugh. You're doing that again. How does this look?
Harold's taking a huge step, especially for someone with autism. It's a Christian service that also pays tribute to the fact that Harold's mother was Jewish.
Miss Stone, come here. This is Miss Stone, my sister.
Harold's new understanding of himself and his family-to-be is allowing him to overcome a lot of the limitations that autism has placed on his life until now.
It's really neat because this person's autistic as well, and we really click in the autism realm, and so at last, after all these years, somebody really understands me, and it's really great. And she's a really lovely lady, and, you know, she's mine, so push off.
Messiah now.
Before God and these people here today and the gate crashers, I promise to care for and cherish you. I promise to love, to respect and share. Don't do that, this noise. To share. Keep this still, it's my eyes. I promise to love, respect and share my life and possessions with you. I promise to the best of my ability to lead you in the will and the way of God until death do us part.
Kiss the bride.
No way, we're autistic.
Since the making of tonight's documentary, Harold and Marie have gone to live in Queensland, while Dale and Elliot are both thriving. Elliot has learnt to write his name and is talking more all the time. Dale will start mainstream school early next year. Well, next week on Documentary New Zealand.
If you want to talk about success at Aranui, talk about the student that comes out the other end.
In 1996, Christchurch's Aranui High School took radical steps to counter the alarming dropout rate among Maori and Polynesian students.
The only thing they're interested in is sports. Why can't we have sports as a subject at school? Well, why not?
Beating the System is a story about changing teenagers' lives as we follow 4 students through a year at Aranui's Sports Academy.
I've seen a lot of the bad times that he went through, and I'm so pleased to see him get his act together.
That's next week on Documentary New Zealand, so we'll look forward to seeing you then. Good night.